If you're on a team, you're going to affect it. Do you want to affect it negatively or positively?
It was so touching for me. Like I got choked up just watching Asahi.
What is your most painful loss? What's up, HAIKYUU homies? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Victoria Garrick here, and not with another HAIKYUU reaction. As you guys know, I wrapped up reacting to season 1 last week. So what better way to kind of put a ribbon on season 1 than to sit down with one of our beloved HAIKYUU reactor creators, Coach Donny. I know you guys know and love him. You comment about him all the time. Coach Donny and I go back in the volleyball world before HAIKYUU, before I even started watching the show. So it's been cool to connect with him on that. And we're doing a series where we each pick our top 5 scenes from season 1, top 5 favorite scenes, and we show them to the other blindly. It's a blind reaction, and then we kind of give our insights. So Coach Donny showed me his top 5 on his channel last week. So if you haven't watched that video, it will be in the description. Check that out so you can see his picks. And then in today's video, I am showing Coach Donny my 5 picks, and we will see what he thinks.
I'm super excited. And last video, we talked about how it is a reflection of our own personal volleyball experiences and our personalities. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, it will be. And as I was picking them, I was thinking my scenes, I think, are a little bit more, they're emotional. They're either really sad or really excited, which I think also is similar to me. But I'm curious to see your feedback. So if you're ready, we can I can jump into showing you scene 1.
Oh, can't wait.
Do you recognize
like
this?
That guitar twang.
Yeah, me too. Do you remember what happens here?
This is super, man. This is a little while ago.
This is back in the single digits.
Oh, okay. Is he gonna hit Kageyama's head? I remember that anxiety.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And then everyone's terrified for him.
The way they animated the looming presence of Kageyama was so good, like right here.
Yes.
Oh, he got those veins popping out of his side of his head.
Then they interrupt with this commercial, which these are always so funny.
Break all the momentum here. They should put Kageyama's head instead of the water bottle there and have Hinata serve at his head. Oh, and then I remember he's like patting his head.
Yes. So Shoyo serves into his head to lose the set. It's like the worst thing ever. And he'd been experiencing anxiety like the full night before this.
Oh, is this where he like vomited and
yes,
all that stuff? Okay.
This is when he was getting performance anxiety.
And Suki is just still laughing his ass off in the corner.
So this is where we're like, what's going to happen? Kageyama's going to explode in his face. It's going to be a disaster. But then...
I love Hinata's facial expressions. Oh, the cold sweats. Man, they're so good at animating the feel of the moment.
Yes.
Right there when he hits his head.
He's like kind of hypnotizing him here back into reality of stop being so nervous.
Uh-huh. He acts like a youngest sibling.
So I loved that scene because I struggle with performance anxiety. So when Shoyo was going through it, I felt so seen. I was like, I relate to this. It's everything you've ever worked for. You're finally there, and now you are so afraid and you lost all your confidence. Kind of dark, but that was like my USC experience. And then I also loved how there was such freedom in making a mistake. Like, he made a mistake, they lost the set, it was embarrassing, and Kageyama was like, okay, you did it. All your anxiety led you to making this horrible mistake, and we're fine. So let's move forward. And I loved how that was handled. And then from that moment on, he got his confidence back.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, you see the humanness of Kageyama too, because he's showing a lot of restraint. Like, it wasn't just a hunky-dory situation where it's like, oh, okay, good job, Kageyama, or
Yeah.
Hinata. It was a, you're okay, and he's like trying not to punch him in the face. And I think that's like such a good contrast for people to see, where even Kageyama in his most competitive moments understands the importance of not getting too much on his teammates. So that was really good for Hinata.
Yeah, he really took like a mature standpoint. Like, he was giving him a learning lesson, which you kind of forget because, I mean, they're the same age, right? They're both these freshmen together. And for some reason, Kageyama has just a lot more maturity and experience as a player.
Yeah. I wonder if part of that is like, the more I learn about Kageyama, he's definitely more introverted, and any spare moment he has, he's probably setting a volleyball and stuff like that. And this goes back to something I talked about in a previous video, where it's easy to misconstrue introverted players, and especially from a coach's perspective, right? Usually when we say, hey, how did practice go? And it's usually the same 3 or 4 people that give feedback. And then it's easy to confuse that for the other people who don't give feedback as, oh, they're not as engaged. But I think for people who are more introverted, they're always processing, and it's important to elicit some response from them too. But going back to Kageyama being introverted, it makes sense to me why he's matured faster, because in my experience, people who are a little bit more introverted are more introspective and more thoughtful about the process. But I think all of us expected Kageyama to blow up, and honestly, that would have been a pretty a pretty funny scene. See him go up and
Yeah.
beat up Hinata. But like you said in the last video that we did, it's another example of showing an appropriate response for a competitive player to how to encourage someone after they make a mistake.
Definitely. And I love how you mentioned the introvert versus the extrovert, or even what either person is thinking about. Because when you're dealing with anxiety, you're thinking about usually yourself, right? Like, how something's going to affect you. Like, what are they thinking about me? Am I going to make this mistake? Do they remember that stupid thing I said? What if coach benches me? And the thoughts are all about yourself. And in this weird way, like, anxiety, the thoughts around it are selfish if you look at them on paper. Whereas Kageyama, or I mean, he grew into this. But even like Oikawa, your favorite K-pop boy, he is always thinking about others. So, he's thinking about, how can I make this person be better? How can I challenge the opponent across the net? He's always framing himself in a way where he believes he has like limitless potential to help perform, challenge, create. And so I think it just goes to show that we all have the energy to be thinking and be, imagining things constantly. But do we want to channel it towards that destructive, crippling energy that we might make mistakes, or to that optimistic side of mindset? And I mean, that part of performing as an athlete is tough.
Yes, that's so well said. And one thing that was cool about the Hinata's focus, it's easy for us to play for a teammate. Like, usually we want to play hard for your teammates, but you don't want to not mess up because you're trying not to piss off a teammate. And even you also don't want to play to not piss off a coach. I know that's hard because usually they're the ones in control of your playing time, and you do want to, please your coach for the most part as a young player. But at the end of the day, you want to do something because you want to do it for yourself. Like, you want to do what you don't want to miss a serve because you want to do well, right? And I think it's easy to Hinata could have easily constructed his whole motivation on, how do I like not piss off Kageyama? And once again, going back to Kageyama's response, it's like, hey, the worst thing has already happened, so do it. Like, just keep getting better. You already got it out.
Yeah, and that's my favorite part about it, is when we're nervous about things in the future or whatever it is, we think, oh, it's going to be the end of the world. Like, my life's going to be over. If I get benched, if we lose this game, I'm never going to go on. But you realize, oh, I'm going to live. Like, I'm going to keep going. Things are going to be okay. And If someone would have told Shoyo you would miss the game point serve and you wouldn't even just miss it, you would hit Kageyama in the back of his head, he would literally have thought his life would never go on, but
Yeah.
his life went on 5 minutes later. And so I loved that.
Yeah. And on the flip side, if we just imagine if Kageyama did blow up in his face, I mean, Hinata might have just quit, or he might have completely lost his confidence and
Yeah.
shaken.
Ooh, that's scary to think of. That just
Yeah.
goes to show how important your interactions with your teammates are, because you can make or break their confidence, what they think about themselves. I'm sure every athlete can think of a time a player said something that really triggered them and made them feel small, or
Yeah.
conversely, another time where a teammate said something to you that just really picked you up. That's a great point. I'm so glad that didn't happen.
Yeah, that would have been the last episode of HAIKYUU because no more Hinata, and we just ended right there.
I know. Yeah, he's so great. Okay, I'll bring you to my next scene.
Once again, the animation, hands don't warp like that, but that's what it feels like a huge block suffocating you.
This is another scene from back when, but it was special to me.
And this is before Asahi joined the team, and they're
Yeah.
trying to convince him. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Remember this one.
I think this scene shows a lot of growth in
Mhm.
both Shoyo and Kageyama.
It's so cute how they both went together to talk to Asahi, like these two underclassmen saying, "Come on, please join us."
Yes. And I think, oh, I love this. Oh, Kageyama, I think, has a line here that shows his growth as well.
Mm.
So Kageyama like shoos him off, and then he turns back to share his thoughts as well.
Facts. Oh, and he's admitting like I just had to realize that myself.
Yes. And I remember that line being super powerful from Kageyama because he acknowledged that he needed other people, and he acknowledged that he didn't know that before and he just learned it. But
Mhm.
my favorite thing about that scene is this idea that you have old veteran player who lost kind of that joy for the game, right? He got scared off the court essentially. He lost his confidence and his spark, and he kind of forgot why he loved volleyball. And then you have this young, like small fry and Shoyo that's like bouncing up and down, and he's talking about the way the ball feels on his hand, and he's bringing back this, like, there's so much opportunity in the game. There's so much joy in the game. And, I resonate with both players. I think I remember being Shoyo when I first showed up at SC, and all the upperclassmen were like, it's double days, we're tired. And I was like, I want to go for 3 practices in a day. And then I remember being an upperclassman and being like, gosh, I lost my love for the sport. Have you
Mhm.
ever experienced either of those positions?
Yeah, the burnout and kind of a need for a refreshing perspective. I would say as a player, because I was a late bloomer, I didn't start playing volleyball until my sophomore year of high school, and I didn't play any clubs. So for me, the 3 high school seasons was like the highlight of the year. The 3 month I held my breath the entire season. And unfortunately, my coach never told us about club or open gyms, so I really only had a chance to play volleyball. And then so I think I really got bit by the volleyball bug later in my career, and then played 7 days a week, 2 times a day, all the way in through my mid-20s. I think at that point, that's when I got burnt out from volleyball, going hardcore for 8 years at that point. And at that time, I was also getting back into coaching, so I kind of wanted to do something else. But yeah, I remember when I was in the thick of it, I just thought, there's no way I would ever stop loving to play volleyball. And when it hit me, I got sad. It's like I was about to break up with with my girlfriend or something, because you're so used to having this joyous relationship, and when it just doesn't get there, you really have to reevaluate. Well, like, what do I do with my free time? What do I want next? Like, what's going to bring me that next level of joy?
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing about reflecting on our favorite scenes together is you mentioned this in the beginning of this video, but how different scenes mean different things to different viewers. And I love how this show has something for everyone. And that might be a scene that some people just don't really care about. They're like, oh, they're just trying to get the upperclassmen back. But for me, it just hit me in like, wow, I've been in both of these positions and it just hits. And I think this show just hits in a lot of different ways. I'm interested. I mean, we both played volleyball, and so now we're watching the show. And so I think a lot of this stuff touches on our own experiences. And I always am curious for someone who never played before. They always watch this show, and usually they fall in love with volleyball and they want to learn how to play. And they think it's so interesting. But I wonder how these scenes make them feel when they haven't had the experience of burnout from the sport,
Yeah. What's funny is I have an online training business, since especially during the pandemic, where I used to train a lot of people in person. Now I do a lot of personal training online. And I would say 20% of my new clients this year were actually HAIKYUU fans that wanted to learn how to play volleyball simply from watching the anime. And these are people in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s that just fell in love with it. And they would ask me, like, how realistic is this? Because I'm essentially striving for those experiences in the anime. Like, they see the team celebrate, it's like, I want to experience that, or I want to be able to dive after losing, or I want to be able to have these arguments with my teammates, these fantasies. I'm happy to tell them that it's all real. You play a part of the team long enough, you're going to get all these experiences.
Yeah, it is for sure. I would say maybe the one thing that's tough is maybe I think the show is a lot about the actual act of playing volleyball with like a sprinkle, not a sprinkle, but I'd say the act of playing volleyball and strategy and wanting to win and push yourself as a player is emphasized more than maybe the team. Oh gosh, but am I wrong in saying that? I was going to say like less of the team dynamics, because when I look at this show, part of me wants to say, yes, it is very realistic and you'll get these experiences. But another part of me is like, there's teams where people aren't this supportive, where people on the team are contractually obligated to play on the team. They're getting a scholarship and they don't want to be there. They don't care to win. They don't want to support. Like, it's just part of what they do to get other things they want in life. And that's fine, like to each their own. But this dynamic where everyone is united because of their love for playing, that's rare. Would you say?
Yeah. To put it in perspective, that's definitely rare. And the majority of the people who do play for volleyball teams are actually on the bench, right? You have a squad of 16 people, 18 people, sometimes for your travel or practice roster. Only 7 people can play. So yeah, it's
And rarely do they act like Suga on the bench being a second up. Usually it is not as kind and supportive as that character, which is why I love him.
Yeah.
In our next scene, we'll actually get to see some game action. This is a scene that I'm glad that you did not pick for your 5, because felt like it had to be one of mine, or the homies would have been like, Vic, what are we doing here? All right, here we go.
Ooh, a tight set and a joust. Oh, I think I know what's gonna happen. I think we got a ninja on the court here.
This scene is
Everyone's
so
just waiting.
insane.
Even the fans are waiting. Oh yeah.
I love it. Just goes silent. And then the best part is the twitch of the hand.
Oh, I didn't even notice the twitch until now. I'm glad you pointed that out. Oh man. And then the look afterward.
Yes. I also love how they slowed that down, because it's just so opposite of how the experience is in real life. You don't even have time to think.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was a pretty epic. That might be one of the most epic moves of the entire season.
For sure. And then to the scene you used in your top 5 of Nishinoya convincing Asahi just to keep trying. I mean, this is where we see that many episodes later, Asahi going back up after being blocked,
Yeah.
asking for that ball. And we see Kageyama accommodating his hitters.
Giving him the set that will make him better. Got to set the big boy a little higher so you can go high and hard. I remember that scream from Hinata.
Yeah.
Oh, is this the imagery where he like busts open the gate?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Such an iconic visualization.
And that calligraphy style animation. Yeah, this scene definitely that one definitely got me emotional.
And then you're like, wait, are they even going to get the points?
It's like they always like to add just a little more climax to an already climatic moment.
This poor dude.
Yeah, that sucks. That was emotional. It was like doubly emotional. You already feel the oh type of thing when Nishinoya does that kick, and you think like, okay, that's gonna be the highlight of the scene. And then Asahi has this moment, and it just keeps compounding. I don't know if you've ever written music before, but the hardest thing as a composer is to have like when you already have a great hook in the song or a great melody, to build it up so that it gets really good toward the end. So you don't want to start too great in the beginning. And it's kind of like in the storytelling, it's like, how can it get any better than the kick save?
Right. And the funny thing too about that scene is I feel a special like inside joke with my homies. You're going to know what I'm about to say, but they always kept telling me like there's going to be some insane save from Nishinoya. There's going to be this insane save, and they were like, it's episode 18. And if you recall, like literally 5 minutes before that kick save, Nishinoya has this crazy dig where he's running like to the end of the court and he like knuckles it back and he flies. Do you remember that
Yeah.
save?
Yeah.
So anyways, that happens. I like pause my computer. I'm like, "Oh my god, you guys, the save was amazing. It was everything you were talking about." And then I like, calm down to keep watching. And then the kick save happens and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I just made such a fool of myself."
Yeah, and then they hit you with that sneak punch. And then
Yeah.
for me as a hitter, I feel that moment where you have been struggling for so long, and like for those who've competed in high pressure moments, and when you failed in pressure moments, those memories really scar you. Even after you've matured beyond that, they don't really fully heal until you've redeemed yourself in that very similar situation. And so it was so touching for me. Like I got choked up just watching Asahi breaking through, and then you see the gate open, like he's finally broken through this burden he's been carrying for a year. And then the sound effects of the gate opening up and then the grunt, uh it's perfect.
So great. So let me ask you, when you get emotional or choked up about that scene, how much of it has to do with, if you had to like literally put a percentage value on the character of Asahi and the show of their breakthrough, or you actually really relating and it resurfacing the emotions you felt when you lived a similar moment?
If I had to give a quick answer, I would say 60-40. 60% the animation, where if I wasn't in there, I was like, ooh, that's an emotional scene. And then that 40% is what's gonna push me over the edge, where it's like I'm right in it with him because I know exactly what he feels like.
Yeah, yeah. I choked up a few times too, especially towards the end of the season. And speaking of tears, the next scene I'm going to show you is one that I think I cried the most at. And it's always so weird when you're like tearing up during a reaction because there's no one in the room with you. And I'm like, and then I deal with mental health issues in general. So sometimes I'm like, I always second guess. I'm like, is it the show? I'm like, am I having a weird week? Like, I can never really tell where my emotions are coming from sometimes.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and watch this next scene because I'm really intrigued to know what you thought of this. And I hope you've seen this scene. Did they make you watch to the end of 24 past the credits?
Yeah, I was just gonna guess that that's probably the scene, because this is definitely the most emotional scene of season one. I think what's so awesome about this scene is you really finally get to see Coach Ukai's nurturing aspect.
Yes, that's a very great point.
First, he was just a cool baker who smoked, who knew a little bit about volleyball. Gratitude. I have something to add on to that during the commentary, but gratitude for sure. Starting from a place of gratitude.
And looking at Shoyo's face here, I mean, have you seen him look more defeated
Um,
ever? I mean, that expression is heartbreaking.
yeah. But then once he gets food in his stomach, he's he's already feeling a little better.
Yeah,
And I think when they start to cry and eat, that's when it's I couldn't resist anymore.
I know. Oh gosh.
Because first, like, oh, this is pretty good.
And just in silence.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, here we go. The floodgates have opened, and now it's hit them.
And it's like
And even
everyone,
Yamaguchi's crying. Even the bench players are crying. I mean, this is a very unified team.
of course, Suki's not.
Yeah, except for Tsuki.
Yeah.
So I interviewed. I don't know if you know who Dustin Watten is.
Yeah, I interviewed
Okay.
him too. He's awesome.
Yeah, such a giving person. And I was interviewing him about how he prepares his mental game because he has a great underdog story of where he was a late bloomer, ended up getting recruited to one of the top colleges, blah, blah, blah. And he was struggling with his confidence at one point in his pro career. Like he played in Brazil, tough environment, and then he played in Poland and a couple other places. And when he got to Poland, he was playing, going back to what you said about players playing because they're a scholarship player. I mean, it's that times 10 in the pro career where very rarely are you going to have a team that actually works as a team. Most people are playing to not lose their contract or try to make more money next year. And so it's such a high pressure environment. And especially for Libero, it's so hard to get a pro contract. Usually it's like an opposite or an outside hitter. So here he is, jobs on the line, and he's trying to figure out how do I play well? Because I've been sucking these last 3 games. Are they going to drop me tomorrow and then bring somebody in? So he said the one thing that helped him a lot when he was working with the mindset coach from VB Mindsetter is starting from a place of gratitude. And he's like a very meditative, spiritual person. So it worked perfectly for him, but he would go through these mental exercises of where he would go into the locker room and nobody was there and he just look around at the space and like, I get to be here. That's the first part. And then when he gets on the court, I get to play volleyball. And then when he puts on the jersey, I get to get paid to play volleyball. And how gratitude is really such an important foundation for us to have in both enjoying the moments when we're playing great, but also in this scene in learning how to heal through some traumatic moments. Yes, the loss was hard, but we get to eat now and we get to have like enjoy these simple things that we easily take for granted.
Yeah, I love that story. That's awesome. Gratitude is one of those things that is like, people always are like, well, how do you get happy, right? How do I be happy? And I think channeling gratitude is like an obvious bridge to get to those feelings of happiness. And the thing that choked me up the most about this scene is it felt like, I mean, I'm interested what your thoughts are, but for me, the reason the tears finally came, I thought was taking those bites of food and then eating was acceptance. Like they fully were, like even with what the coach was saying of you got to eat to get stronger, the game is over, like you need to replenish your body because of what's happened. It just felt like that action was accepting we lost the game and this is what we do now, whether we like it or not. And then like the tears just come because the team's moving forward, even though it's not what they wanted to do, you know? What did you think?
Man, great symbol. I would not have extrapolated that level of symbolism from that scene. That's great. Yeah, a physical sign of acceptance because you can't move on until you accept what happened. And that's hard for a team that works so hard to compete. And that's actually a very fast acceptance. Usually, I don't know about you, but I'm I'm dwelling on that loss for weeks on end without an opportunity to really be forced to physically move on from that.
I was going to ask, what is your most painful loss?
Ooh, I know exactly which one. This is the one it's like an endless well of motivation for me to never let this happen again. So I was playing club for San Jose State, and at that time, we were like a mid-pack team, and one of the top teams in our conference was UC Berkeley. And they were big, they're talented. Everyone played lots of club, and they were just a very more experienced team than we were. And we were always the underdog. We were a smaller team. We had our facilities were kind of ghetto. So every time people come to our gym, people were wondering if this was a high school gym. And they just we just always had a chip on our shoulder, and UC Berkeley was always a little bit douchey. Like they just acted like they were better than everybody else. I don't know what your experience was playing against the women's team. So when we played against them, they always had our number. They would always beat us. And my junior year, so my third year with the program, we probably lost the previous 8 to 10 times since I've played with them. And finally, we have a chance to play them in a tournament in Far Westerns, and it's split 1-1. So we won a set, or sorry, they beat us the first one. We beat them pretty handily the second one once we made a few adjustments. And then we are up in the third set 14-12. Okay. And myself and the middle, we're both the best hitters on the team. So we're both hitting like a 600 kill percentage, and we're doing really well. So I'm in the back row. I serve tough serve. They have to pass a free ball over, and the setter sets me a bick, which we've been running like nothing easily all tournament. And as I'm going up for the bick, I'm already celebrating. I'm like, yeah, take this. And then as I hit right into the net. So it's 14-13. So like, okay, well, cool, calm down. All right. They serve, we pass a dime. My setter sets the other middle because we're opposite of each other. So we split the offense. He starts celebrating, and we're like a big trash talking team because we're small and we're okay. Okay. He goes up and he's already saying, bunch of cuss words and blah, blah, blah. And then he hits out like an inch out. He like goes wrist away, sharp angle, just barely out. So we're like, okay, 14-14. We're still in control. We still feel like we're in control of the game. The same server goes back, serves an ace. Now they are up 15-14. And then we're like, oh, shoot, what do we do? And then we're all freaking out. We play really tight. They serve. We pass a 1-point pass. We have to send a free ball over. They set one of their good hitters, and he terminates, and we lose 16-14 after being up 14-13. And that was so painful for me. I probably couldn't sleep for a couple months. One, because that was our chance to break a streak against a team that just never gave us any respect. And the second reason why that sucks so much is because we knew we celebrated too early. Like mentally, we weren't mentally weak. We just mentally weren't focused at the end. And that just bit us in the butt so hard. And I still feel like just talking about it, I feel those emotions right now. And I've been able to deal with it. So it's no longer a scar. It's just like a memory that reminds me to stay focused when I play. But that's my most painful memory. And the good news is the year after we beat them 2 times in a row. So we learned our lesson after
okay.
that.
I'm so glad to hear that. The year later, you redeemed yourself. But yeah, that sounds brutal. But ultimately, the lesson you learned from that, probably as a player, served you so well to win like many future games.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is vivid memory. And I feel like it's interesting how everyone has like, you didn't even hesitate. You were like, I know the story. And you're like, this is the rower and this is the score. Oh, yes.
What's yours? I'm curious.
Kind of similar. Freshman, this is my definitely most painful loss. Freshman year, we are the number 1 seed in the national tournament. Sam Bricio is our 01 National Player of the Year. We're in the Elite 8 playing Kansas, and we're seeded 1. So we're seeded to win the Natty. And we go to 5 with Kansas. We're in the 5th. We come out hot. It's 13-9. So we're up 13-9. And at the time, our offense was literally hit or miss. Like we were running the fastest offense in the country at the time. And honestly, still to this day, I honestly haven't seen anyone run an offense that fast, middles, oppo, outside, like BIC included. And so because of that, if we weren't passing well, or if our setter was somewhat off, or if the hitter timing was off, we couldn't score. Like it was, our outside hitters were taking their final 2 steps as the ball was in the setter's hands. That's how fast it was. And so if anything was off, we weren't working, and it was really hard to sustain. And so anyways, in this 5th set, things are getting shaky. It's not like I even remember it was no one's fault, but we didn't perform, and they scored 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And went to the Final Four, and we were out of the tournament. And we had a bus ride home as the number 1 seed. And I just remember crying in the bus with my teammate. No one spoke. Yeah. And so when they're eating that dinner, it just makes me think of like, I mean, I couldn't eat when it ended, but just that bus ride crying home. And similar to you, I couldn't sleep for a few days. I kept being like, we dreamt that, we dreamt that,
Yeah.
we dreamt that. And then you wake up and you're like, no, it's reality. You're not in the Final Four. It's over. Yeah, that was the most brutal. And then similarly, my junior year, same situation, but we were underdogs. We were underdogs, 5th set, Elite 8. We could have won in the 4th set. I missed a line dig. Oh God, it all comes back. You know, I'm like, we were up in the 4th. We had game point. I'm not as great at digging the line, or I wasn't that great my junior year, at least. I needed to get better. And so I told my outside, I was like, they're setting the oppo, block line, block line. Like, your block line is better than my try to dig this girl line. So I remember telling her, and whether she didn't get out or not, or maybe she was supposed to be reading the middle, I don't know. But the girl hit line. I didn't make a great dig. I either shanked the dig or I didn't make a great dig. And we end up losing the 4th set and then losing in the 5th set. But I just, in my head, it comes down to I missed that dig. Yeah, so the stuff, it hits deep. And I still have not watched that game against Kansas either. Maybe I should for a reaction video, but it's too tough.
Yeah, totally. Maybe you can watch with a friend, a teammate that went through it with you, so you guys can process it together.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, see, this is why we cry, people at the show, because they're like living out our experiences.
Going back to like eating, after that loss against Berkeley, I pride myself in being able to eat a lot of food. After every game, we go out and just go in and out, order like 3 double doubles. I mean, we just find the biggest food. And that's a great bonding experience, right? You go out to have some drinks or whatever. And that was the only time that I remember we didn't eat. No one even brought it up. We all just sat down. We sat down, not even on a chair. We sat down on the floor and we just laid our backs against the wall, and we just, half of us had our heads in our jerseys, the other half. And I don't think there was any need to say anything like, hey, are you guys okay? Or like, you guys want to get something? I think no one was in the mood to do any of that. So your bus ride home reminds me of that.
Yeah,
sure.
you lose your appetite. It's not even like it's not even a conscious thing. It's just you're sick to your stomach. It's, if you're ever just in shock or you're in grief or you're anxious, you sometimes like don't even have the appetite because you're just in such disbelief. So that's, yeah, I relate to that. Well, on a happier, lighter, more hopeful note, I think our final scene is the final scene I'm going to show you today is a perfect way to end this. And this is why it was one of my favorites.
I love how Yamaguchi went out on his own to try to improve himself, especially as a bench player.
And find a mentor. Finding a mentor is so important. Also, the music in this scene is so sad.
Yeah, the music is just as on point as the storytelling and the animation.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they're going to share a backstory of his mentor. Like maybe I wonder if he was a bench player too.
They
talk about that?
will in this scene.
Okay.
He had a similar role as Yamaguchi, which is why I think
right. Okay.
It's special.
That's why they gravitated towards each other. Oh, you're right. Yes, I do remember now. Dang, he got that spin down. Ho, that's exactly what a float looks like right there, a little wobbly.
Yeah. They even kind of have a similar look.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's
little
so
hair,
emotional.
moppy hair down.
Mm-hmm. I just think this scene, Yamaguchi stands for a lot here. Like, you have a choice. Are you going to get down about it, or are you going to decide to improve and suit up for another go? Yeah, and that's how the scene ends. And we don't know what happens till season 2, or at least I don't know. I think you've started season 2. But my thought is that Yamaguchi is going to buckle down and try to chase getting his float serve down and not being embarrassed by the fact that he went and he missed that serve. And so I like what this scene stands for everyone.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I will say that Yamaguchi does get a chance to try some of his skills that he's been working on. But it's serving is one of the skills, actually, it's the only skill. It's closed chain. You have complete control over it and you can practice it. And this totally brings back a specific memory in high school. So I rode the bench for 2 years on varsity. And unfortunately, I don't think I ever got really a fair shot. The person that started over me would miss like 20% of the practices. He was great in hitting lines, but his hitting percentage was like -30. But it'd always be that one flashy kill that I think is the reason why the coach would keep him in. So here I am just sitting on the bench and studying hard. And like you said, I had a choice. I had a choice to just mope and say, the coach liked this person better than me, or I'm just not getting a lot of opportunities, or I can just work on myself and just be ready when my time comes. So I actually went after school. Our practices started at 5. I would stay on campus and I would practice my jump serve against the wall. It's like a large wall with a paint line for tennis. So I would put a piece of tape, I would mark it against the wall, and I measure 8 feet or estimate 8 feet, and I would just practice serving. And I actually eventually taught myself how to jump serve just by doing that. I just studied whatever player on my team and I tried to mimic him. And I would literally practice jump serving for an hour. And it was so gratifying when it finally paid off, because once I did get my opportunity my junior year, second half of my junior year, I already had a good jump serve in and was already very consistent, and I just exploded on the scene. But I totally get what Yamaguchi is feeling here, and you are training for that one moment to be called on the court and give your opportunity.
And similar to your first comment about Yamaguchi, he went outside of the normal hours to improve something. And that's similar to what you did, right? As you went outside to try to work on whatever it was that you thought was your weakness. That's actually how I became a libero. I was an outside hitter who couldn't play back row. So I never got to play. And the other two outsides were better than me and they played all the way around. My coach didn't want to have an outside that came out of the game for whatever reason. They wanted them to hit the pipe or they wanted them to play all the way around. So I was like, okay, I'm not playing because I can't serve receive and I can't play defense well. So that whole season, I worked really hard on passing and playing defense to the point where I got so good at it that my coach was like, well, next year you should just be our libero. And so it's funny because I never know what would have happened. Like my position switch is what allowed me to play at a higher level. I never would have been able to jump high enough, hit hard enough, or be good enough in the front row to play in the Pac-12. So I always look back on that. And whenever anyone says like, well, I'm a middle, so I don't need to be a good passer. Well, I'm a setter, so I don't need to. I'm like, yes, you do. I'm like, you want to play on any team. I don't know, care what position you play. Learn to play back row. And it will even just serve you well. Like if you get on a team and, you get beat out and there's one setter and it's not you, but you're really good at right back defense and you also can serve receive, then you can compete with the DS now, So I just think being good at back row can only help you.
That reminds me of 2 stories of 2014. That was the first time that we went undefeated in our high school league. And that was predicated on the previous year, or the 2 years prior to that, the starting setter, who was a junior at the time, had to give up her spot to a freshman who was much better. So that was a hard transition, and she was a junior at that time, having a freshman start over her. But she was mature enough to have a conversation and say, Coach, it's obvious that Cynthia is better than me. I might have more experience. She's taller, she's faster, she's just more capable. But I want to contribute to the team. And honestly, I want to earn some playing time. So what's my best chance? And that's the best conversation you can have with the coach. Be honest with them, because then they can guide you and they involve them in more in the process. So I said, serving, I will never say that you won't start over her, because if you do become better during practice, you earn the opportunity. I'm always going to give you that. But your serve and defense is gonna be better than her just because you have more experience. So she became our serving specialist, and every time she went back to serve, it was 2 to 3 points every single time. And she
Wow.
really reveled in that moment, because not only could she serve tough enough, it wasn't always aces. It was just this weird float that people couldn't pass, and they'd earn a free ball. She'd go in and pass a free ball. We set up our offense. We convert, and that's a crazy to average like 2.1, 2.2 serves every time you go back to serve. And then and she would actually be a serving specialist for one of our outside hitters who couldn't play defense, who was young and big arm, but was slow. So it was kind of adding to your story where she came in for somebody else.
I love that. And that's another thing that the show does so well is it makes you feel important regardless of your role. And like you as a coach, you know how crucial it is that she gets you those 2 3 points every single set. Someone in the audience, or sorry, the crowd might be like, oh, you go right in and they take you right out, and they don't
Uh-huh.
realize how important it is that you give your team that buffer, or you bring them that offensive energy and momentum so that they FBK on the next play. And I love how there's a storyline here that's praising Gucci as like this special, he has a special role where he can really impact his team in a small way. And
Mhm.
I think that's awesome for young players to see, because, they want to be the ace, or they want to be
Yeah.
the setter like Kageyama, or they want to be the best libero like Nishinoya. And so I think a character like this really helps show that any small thing you're doing for your team matters.
You know what's ironic? The person who is most capable of being the ace, Asahi, didn't want to be the ace in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And the other people who are less capable want to be the ace. It's just kind of a weird dynamic how
You always want
how
what
that's
you don't have, you know?
yeah. Going back to another bench story, another great role too, it's happened with the same player where a former outside got taken over by a more talented freshman, and we had the same conversation. And her role ended up becoming a serving specialist, but also like a relief role. When we knew that some of our players were getting tired and we needed them fresh for set number 4, set number 5, she was ready to go in and be very consistent. We just needed no errors, decent passing, and serving. That's all we needed if we were doing well. And when you
That's,
get that buy-in from those
yeah.
players that have those specialized roles, it makes a huge difference. And it really is important that everyone's contributing to some respect, either in practice, as a relief player, as a starter. I really wish more teams would approach their teams as a spectrum versus a dichotomy between like starters and non-starters.
Yeah, that's another thing that is underappreciated, is even just the practice players. Like,
Yeah.
there were girls on my team who, and it depended on the year, and we had 2 different coaches, but I can think of a player who every practice gave 100%. She was never going to be in the game. She never got to play, but she brought it when the starters couldn't.
Mhm.
And it helped make us better. It helped push us. Like, it's behind the scenes work. And so I think it goes to show how everyone, if you're on a team, you're going to affect it. Do you
Yeah.
want to affect it negatively or positively? And that choice is ultimately up to you.
Yeah. So I actually interviewed Kevin Hamley about 6 months ago. And for listeners who don't know who Kevin Hamley is, he's the Stanford coach, women's coach, and they've been doing really well under his leadership. And University of Illinois, they did really well with them too. When I interviewed him, there was one year where they retained majority of the starters. I think they only graduated, so only one person graduated, and they retained almost 80% of their starting roster. And I
Yeah.
remember when I brought that up to him, he got a little irritated because, like, I don't know why people keep saying that. Because he listed 5 or 6 other, to him, impact players who weren't starters or got a little bit of playing time. But he's like, these people are just as important. They pushed everyone in practice. They're the reason why the starters could be as good as they could be. Because one, there's someone always chasing their tail, but also they got great practices because of them. And that was just so refreshing to hear that one of the best coaches in the nation values his non-starters as much as his starters, and he sees them as impact players for sure.
I love that. That's so special. That's really cool. And it's funny that he was like, "Hey, what about XYZ?"
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're talking about. Who they graduated. I remember that the first year they started this crazy era, Inky Ajanaku led all the freshmen. Was it Inky led them to a natty? And then
Yeah.
Inky had to, yeah, and then Inky graduated and they returned. Plummer, Gray, Fitzmaurice, Hentz,
Yeah.
all those girls. Yeah, they were just dominant. Like, even playing against them, it was just like, well, we're playing against the best volleyball in America right now, so just have fun.
Yeah. Man, what a privilege though. Like, you got to test your skills against the best and see how you measure up. And yeah.
Yeah, it's just, oh gosh, it's like you go back and you wish you could have another go at it and
Yeah.
have that approach, like that grateful approach you're talking about. And I always think, like, if I get another opportunity to play competitively somehow, I wonder if I'll be able to harness all that I've been learning since the game has ended for me. Like,
Mhm.
even what I've learned through the show HAIKYUU, I always tell myself, if I play competitively again, I'm definitely going to be binge watching HAIKYUU episodes before games, because I think it just brings you that, like, grounded and down to earth inspiration.
Yeah. Here's my question for you. Actually, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while. If you had a chance to resume a competitive career, whether it's like competing in all the most important tournaments nationally or maybe getting overseas contracts, would you ever want to redo it as an outside hitter and just see how far you can go as a hitter?
Um, I weirdly don't even have like a desire to be a hitter. I just feel like I felt so at home as a libero that no part of me wants to like call for the ball. I think I've been on so many different teams where there's been these phenomenal hitters who I could never even like hold a torch to, like some of the best hitters in the country. And I'm like so happy to cover them as they do what they do best. Like I actually love being one of the people on a team who like everyone looks to for serve receive or looks to for the good pass. Like that's something I really pride myself on. So I don't even have a desire to be an outside hitter. If I had an opportunity to play competitively in the United States as a libero, I would most likely jump at it. But I think we talked about this a while ago when you interviewed me, but leaving the country was never something I wanted to do. So, you know, I always imagined volleyball ending for me after college.
Well, Athletes Unlimited, if that continues to grow.
Hit me up, ladies.
Or they got some, there's always some competitive. I used to play a lot of co-ed volleyball back in the day, and then I just got back into men's when they started a semi-professional league through USA Volleyball. If I ever need a co-ed libero, you're the first person I'll call.
Yeah, that would be fun for sure. Passing men's serves is so fun because it's literally like just like digging. I mean, we used to do some co-ed stuff with the men's team at USC, and the net is high and they have these nasty jump tops that it's so fun. It just feels like you're literally digging a back row attack every time a guy serves. But yeah, that would be fun. Hopefully, once again, we can all get back to open nationals. That would be fun. Yeah. Well, thanks for watching my top 5 scenes from season 1.
Yeah.
I hope you liked them. I enjoyed yours. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The double H's, is that what you call your fans?
Yeah, my double H's and my triple H's. So my double H's are my HAIKYUU homies. That's everyone. And then my triple H's are the people that watch my 2-episode hour-long reactions straight through. They deemed themselves the hardcore HAIKYUU homies. But I love all my homies. Thank you guys for watching this video today and tuning in to watch me react and collab with Coach Donny. Once again, if you guys want to check out his channel where he showed me his top 5 scenes, you can check the description. I've linked his video as well as all of his cool social media stuff. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this part 2. If you guys ever want to see us collab again, comment down below. Let us know what you want to see from us. We like each other, so we're happy to do more for you guys. It works pretty well. Okay, great. Well, thank you guys for tuning in this week. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video, and leave a comment on what your favorite scene was that I showed today. I want to know what your favorite scene was of these 5, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.